In this video, we're going to take a look at two things regarding pivot tables. One is what happens if you have a numeric field here and you want it to be a category, such as this job code. And by default, if the column has numbers in it, Excel wants to add them all up, and it doesn't make any sense to add these numbers up. So that's one thing we're going to take a look at. And then the other thing is, which is related, is we're going to look at the field settings values so that you can do things other than just sum. Okay? So first of all, this is data that's appropriate for a pivot table. However, we only have repeating values in two columns here. We have repeating values in department, we have repeating values for job code. So we can group on those, but those are the only two things that we can group on. And for numbers, we've got age over here. We're actually going to leave that alone. And we've also got salary over here, and that's what we're going to sum, and we'll actually try doing a few other things with it as well. So put the cursor any place in the data before you start. Do not select more than one cell. And let's go to Insert and do Pivot Table, and it should automatically select the correct data. You should see the dancing green line here, and I'm going to put it on a new worksheet. Click on OK. And here's our pivot table template. And let's go over here and let's do department, and let's do current salary. And I'm going to change the salary settings here and go to currency and decrease the decimal places. And again, I lost my pivot table field list over here because I clicked off of the pivot table. To get it back, just click any place on the pivot table. Okay, now let's say I want them classified by job code as well. Watch what happens when I click on job code here. Because job code is a numeric field, it puts it in the values box, and anything it puts in the values box down here automatically gets summed. So it's adding up, and by the way, I'm getting dollar signs too, which don't make any sense. So let's go to comma here and decrease the decimal places, and there we go. So it's adding them up, and those are categories. It makes no sense to add those up. So but you might want to count them. That's about the only thing useful that you can do with them. So let's go down here to sum of job code and click on the down arrow here, and then click on value field settings. And this shows you what kinds of computations can be done on the field that's in the values box. And by default, it always adds up the numbers, and that's probably the function that you want more often than any others. But it will also do a few other ones here. These should sound familiar. These are on the Home tab as some of your simple arithmetic functions. Sum, count, average, min, and max are all on the Home tab. And then we got some other ones here that are a little more complicated, and we're not going to worry about those. So by default it does a sum, but we can make it do a count. Okay, and I think there were, let's go back and look here. Actually, let's click on OK here. So there were 12. If I go back and look at my pivot table data, wrong one. Let's look at this one. Has the other pivot table data on it. And I go from row 2 to row 13, so that's 12 rows. Okay, so it's counting them correctly, and I get 12 people altogether. It is summing the current salary. Now, let's go in here to the current salary, and instead of finding the sum, let's go to value field settings, and let's count how many we have, and we should get the same number here that we get for job code. Click on OK, and now we get 5, 3, and 4. And let's try some of the other ones. Click on the down arrow, go to value field settings, and let's do average, and click on OK, and it gives me the average salary by department. Let's go back again, click on the down arrow and choose value field settings, and let's choose max and click on OK, and it will give me the highest salary in each department. And the last one I'm going to do is min, and it will give me the lowest salary in each department. Okay, so you don't always have to just go with the sum. You've got at least 4 other options there that are fairly common. So I'm just going to cancel out of this. But now let's take a look at job code here. That is a category, and so it really doesn't belong down here. So I'm going to turn that off for a second, and then I'm going to turn it back on again. And by default, it goes down here and tries to sum them again. I got my dollar signs back, so let's get rid of the dollar signs in the decimal places. And so it's adding them up, and we don't want that. It puts it in this box by default because it is a number, but you don't have to leave it there. You can take it and you can grab it over here and you can put it in the rows box, and it gives me the minimum. Let's go back here and let's do the sum again. And so now it tells me the sum of the salary for each one of these job codes within each department. And I can take job code, and we can make this, instead of a list, we can make it into a table format by dragging job code up here. And I get the same data, but now it's in a table format. So if you take any numeric field and put it in the columns box or put it in the rows box, it will interpret that basically as a text field. It will not do any arithmetic on them. What it will do is it will group all of the same values together and then perform a computation down here. Let's try one more thing here. I'm going to get rid of all of the fields here, and I'm going to click on job code, and I'm going to drag it down here, and it will list all of the unique job codes, and there's only 3. And then I'm going to take job code and drag it down here, and now it's trying to do a sum. I do not want the sum, so let's click on the down arrow and let's do a count and click on OK. And again, it's always putting the dollar signs back in for me, so let's make that a number. So it tells me how many people have a job code of 1, how many have a job code of 2, how many have a job code of 3. So you can actually put the same field on both sides here, and over on this side, you will, if you're doing this, if you're putting the same field on both sides, probably what you want to do over here is count. That's probably the only thing that really makes any sense. Okay, I'm going to turn those off. And you can do the same thing with any one of these other fields. I can choose department, and that's a text field, so it goes here by default. And then I can take department, and if you want a second one, you can't click on the checkbox because it turns it off. So leave it on and get your four-headed arrow and drag it down here. And the only thing that Excel can do with a text field is it can count. So if I just want to know how many there are of something in some particular field grouping here, I can click on it once, and if it's not a number field, it'll automatically go down here. If it is a number field, it'll go down here. We can just drag it over. And then the second time, you just click and drag. And if it's a number field, you may have to change it from sum to count. If it's a text field, it will just automatically count. So that's a real handy way, a real easy way of getting counts of the number of values in any particular grouping here. And that takes care of everything regarding numeric fields and the value field settings.